Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for checking in here. David McGlennon, and I have my good friend, Terrie Reeves, with me today. It's going to be an exciting conversation. Terrie, welcome, and I'm so grateful to have a chance to talk with you today. Why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and who you are, where you're located, and what you do.
Certainly, and I'm excited about the conversation too. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. My name, of course, is Terrie Reeves, and I am in OD work, in and around organization development. So you and I have a lot of that in common, David. And
Yeah.
I think what I would say underneath that is I have a strong desire to help guide people in the direction of their dreams. And as Pollyanna as that might sound, I feel like in order to give back, I have found that I enjoy helping individuals, teams, and organizations kind of find their moral compass, find where they want to head directionally, and then to provide the tools and support to help people find their own answers or find their own way. And my company is Empower Health America. So I do work with individuals, I work with teams, and I work with organizations in and around culture. If I had to put a big bullseye on it, to ensure that they are creating a healthy work environment, that they can recruit and retain, they can empower and inspire, they can help educate. And I think about personal development. And as odd as that might sound, companies want people to be proficient in their job, but I also feel like really progressive companies are thinking about the individual in a more holistic manner.
Absolutely.
And so what can we do to help that person personally grow and evolve as a human being?
Yep.
Because they're going to be far happier, far healthier, and far more effective, not just at work, but you're helping them, with tools within a work environment that could perhaps help them with life skills outside of work. Because I don't think you're a different person when you're at work or at home.
Yep.
Other things, I am passionate about teaching yoga. I love mindfulness. I do competitive ballroom dancing. I don't sit still very often.
That's awesome. I love it. I didn't know that. Competitive ballroom dancing. I learned something new today.
Yeah. So I was involved, it was 2 years ago, with a nonprofit organization here called Carolina Breast Friends. And they're an extraordinary group that helps breast cancer survivors not have to take that journey by themselves. And it's not so much research-based as it is just really providing the support to people as they are going through a pretty traumatic period of their life. And their fundraiser is called Dancing with the Stars, not to be confused with the TV show.
Yep.
And I was asked to dance, and I was asked to raise money, of course, nonprofit.
Yep.
And that scared me, but I thought I can do this. The dancing piece didn't, but I thought, the money piece, asking friends, how that goes. But I thought, what, it's a great cause.
Yep.
I love to dance. The people are amazing. And I met some of the survivors. And so I dove in, and it poked the sleeping giant, because I used to dance when I was younger, and I got bitten. And then I won the competition.
Did
knock
you?
on wood,
all right. How
and
about
I
that?
raised a lot of money. Knock on wood
Cool.
again.
Yeah.
And I have continued to dance. And
Neat.
I did gymnastics and dancing when I was younger, and I do a lot of yoga now. So I've kept my body fairly physically healthy in the grand scheme of things. And so it's my new passion.
I love
Snowboarding has now been upstaged by ballroom dancing.
From snowboarding to ballroom dancing. I love that. Maybe that's the title of this episode. I think that's awesome.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, there's no doubt that you and I connected, and no surprise, I should say, that you and I connected because your passion. I'm actually on a board of directors of a cancer services organization. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's called Our Clubhouse. It used to be called Gilda's House, and it's very similar in its mission to help people come alongside people who are going through the journey of cancer. And so while you did ballroom dancing to raise funds, I'm actually going to rappel off of a 26th floor building to
over
raise
the
funds.
edge.
Yes, over the edge. I'm doing over the edge.
We did that here as a fundraiser, our first time ever fundraiser.
Really?
And I was in school that Saturday, so I got out of having to take the leap of faith like off a tall building for breast cancer survivors. But I
I'm gonna,
sponsored somebody. I was
I'm
there
doing it.
vicariously.
I'm doing it. Yep. I'm doing it in September. So,
David,
we've,
that's
we've
awesome.
got that in common. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I had been looking for a nonprofit to get involved with,
Mhm.
and very similar to you, the deeper I got involved, the more I wanted to continue. And so I'm on their board now. And
Love it.
you know, you think about what makes you happy, and to be able to find something meaningful and to be able to give back in a way that's intentional
Oh
is
yeah,
amazing. You almost get as much as the giver as you do as you're giving to the
for sure.
person that's receiving it. It's so that transaction is so intrinsically connected at the heart that I have had the most amazing experience being on the board and working with people that are kind of like-minded people working for a common cause, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's just been one of the most rewarding things I've done in the last 3 years.
I love it. I love it. How, take me back for a second to like how you got into your industry. How did you get into the industry? And like what motivated you to be in organizational development and really, even personal development?
Hmm. Loaded question. I'm gonna try to give you the short version. I took the track of marketing and publishing, and so went to work right out of college for a company that produced U.S. Airs in Flight magazine. So I traveled a lot with that magazine. And then I moved to New York and worked for Vogue Magazine for 2 years. Really cool experience being in the city.
How about?
Nothing at all resembled what I'm doing now. However, there was always a fascination of human behavior. Why do people buy advertising? Why are people attracted to certain things? What motivates people? And so I believe that that's sort of where it started. I moved to from New York to Charlotte and went to work for the Carolina Panthers, which was always a passion of mine to work for the
Cool.
NFL.
Yeah,
Go
cool.
figure. When I was 12, nobody in my family ever even played football. And so I just had this little desire, and was fortunate enough to be here when they launched the team. And it was a great way to get ingrained in the community.
For
And then
sure.
I ended up um, launching a company called, don't laugh, Energy Quest Future Fitness. And so I
Okay.
was very
I love it.
interested in physical well-being. And
Yeah.
that's where it started. How can
Uh,
we keep ourselves physically healthy in order to live a healthier, more resilient, more productive life? So
mhm.
it started, and I don't want to call it superficial. It's sort of that physical side of our well-being, and it's a very
Yeah,
important part of our well-being.
most
And I
definitely.
think being in that business took me on a journey that has opened up an amazing world for me, because there was always the interest of resiliency and the human, our human capacity, what we can achieve.
Yeah.
And I did that for probably 3 or 4 years. I did a lot of health advocacy work. I go to companies and do little health fairs and things like
Uh-huh.
that. So more advocacy work and
Sure.
more around physical well-being. What happened was I began to, I think, personally mature as a human being, and
Mhm.
doing more research in and around total well-being and understanding nutrition and relationships and physical well-being, sleep. I mean, all the things that began to create more of a holistic kind of view of the things that need to be balanced in our lives in order to be in optimal health.
Mhm.
And so I launched another company. It's sort of rebranded, called Wellness Coalition America.
Okay.
And then I had a third, this is where it really supersizes. I met the CEO of a third party organization. They do third party administration for self funded plans.
Mhm.
And very, very bright man, David Tate, and it's a company called HealthGram. And he was very fascinated because I was doing a lot of writing and I created a lot of intellectual property in and around health and well being,
Mm.
beginning to take a more holistic approach, not just sick care, but preventative care. And I think he knew my background and he started talking with me and is like, I'd be interested in doing some projects with you, maybe some strategic alliances. And the more we talked, the more interested I got in his business, because he had a huge platform. He had companies that he managed their plan. He was offering solutions to the organizations that he worked with. And he also was in growth mode. Very
Uh,
bright man, very forward thinking, kind of looking at market gaps, very entrepreneurial, which I've always leaned in that direction. So I thought,
sure.
okay, I can have security. I can work with a company that's aligned with my mission and vision. This is a very entrepreneurial organization. It's smaller. So he actually bought my business,
Gotcha.
brought me in, and I helped him build out his wellness and medical management division.
Okay.
And what was interesting is he was very smart in that he recognized self-funded employers pay for their own health care. So whatever people consume, they pay for. So
Right.
there's a lot of skin in the game to inspire their employees to be healthy. And how do you do that? And
Right.
obviously, being an OD, you recognize it starts with culture and it
Yep.
starts at the individual level. And then there has to be a readiness. And then how can you get people to buy in? And how can you structure something that's sustainable, that's measurable? And so
Yeah.
David had some diagnostic tools. Number one, we got claims experience, so we could see where there were issues within the organization from a health perspective. And he had nurse coaches already on staff that could provide tools and support to people that we identified who had conditions. And so I'm starting to see now some structure around, rather than just seeing there's problems, there's an actual strategy and a way that we can inspire and empower people to make better decisions about their health, their healthcare
Love it.
consumption,
Yeah.
not just chronic condition management, but preventative education and looking at health in a more holistic manner. And David
Yeah.
always had that kind of vision. It's not just about managing diabetes, it's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I learned a lot about the insurance business. I
I'm
learned
sure.
a
Yeah.
lot about working with brokers that have the great opportunity and honor of helping organizations mitigate risk and lower healthcare costs. So it opened up a whole new world in that regard. And also on the data side, how can we use data analytics and how can we do assessments to gauge where people are? And then how can we use that information to move them into strategies and intervention strategies? And
Yeah.
then how can we measure outcomes on the back end? So 10 years of doing that, extraordinary opportunity. We put on-site clinics into organizations. We launched cultural wellness campaigns, well-being campaigns, and then we did on-site coaching. So it was, and some virtual, and much like we're doing our Zoom today,
Yeah.
which technology really allows much more, really a broader platform to truly reach and scale and meet more people virtually, where that was not an opportunity to even do it as efficiently even 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's sort of where I was, where I went with David. I left the organization. I had a desire to be more entrepreneurial, and they were, well, I don't know how to say it, except for when you have a vision that's bigger than the one that you're in, it's important to pursue that
Sure.
and to be grateful for where you were and to have learned as much as I could. And
Hmm.
I just had a different vision. And so I launched the company that I now own, Empower Health America,
Love it.
with the same ideology of how can I be preventative in nature? How can I go in and do diagnostics? How can I look at the entire culture? And then what can I do to help people? And when I say help people, going back to not just sick care, but resiliency, emotional intelligence, looking at preventative care in a more holistic manner.
Hmm.
And, you and I've talked a little bit. I've developed an online assessment tool, which is really it's almost taking a life inventory of 15 different domains. I've done
Hmm.
about 10 years of research in and around readiness to change, health and happiness. So this tool allows me to go in and really do a better job, I think a more comprehensive job of assessing where people are in their life
Yeah.
more broadly. And I think in doing that, it's introducing a broader concept of how we can help employees, which healthier, happier employees are more engaged and more productive, more apt to stay. So retention is higher. And I even think we're asking the why questions deeper than these health risk assessments where they just ask health related questions. I mean, these why questions are so powerful because I think it begins to wake people up to what's really important. And I think there needs to be more of that in the world. And so
Yeah.
this tool begins to get after the why underneath a lot of dimensions in folks' lives. And
Love
I
that.
know we're going to talk about the why, but so that's where I
Yeah.
am now. And
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing. And
That's awesome.
yeah, I think
Well,
it's just, you go.
Well, I was just going to say, so dive into that why question, because, I know that I talk about asking powerful questions and asking good questions, and that, there's a great book by my mentor, John Maxwell, called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions.
Yeah.
And it was probably the first book that really helped me to see that there's a strategy and an intentionality about asking good questions that unlocks people to become aware of something that they know. It's just not in their conscious awareness. They have to kind of unlock the subconscious, and to do that you have to ask a question. And so you talked about asking a powerful question to unlock the why, or that purpose behind somebody's doing something or behavior. So how do you do that? Like, tell us a little bit about how do you ask good questions, and like, as a leader, if I'm a new leader, how do I ask good questions of my people?
So we could speak for a couple hours on this
I know,
holiday
I know.
workshop. I think we should do it, David.
There you go. I love it.
So so number one, I think, what is the context in which the why is being asked? So if I'm in I call coaching session with someone that is wanting to dive deeper into sort of lifestyle related areas, work-life balance, stress, relational, then that's sort of going to shape the powerful questions, right? If
Sure.
it's more in a leadership and an executive role about communication and self-regulation, conflict management, then that's going to shape some of the questions. But fundamentally, I think powerful questions, and you used a great word, unlocks. And it's funny because in the assessment, you're literally unlocking.
Right.
And the metaphor is that it's like the iceberg. The tip is what we see, and it's the subconscious that we're unaware of. And it's not that we're detached from it, it's just asleep.
That's right.
So these powerful questions can probe and wake us up to things that we haven't thought about. So it's not that we are giving answers or driving the direction of the conversation. It just creates this powerful question that unlocks a greater level of awareness. And so for me, I believe awareness is where it starts. I think it's very difficult to have a strategic plan and to move forward with intention and to hook into intrinsic motivation without unlocking the why. And it sort of starts with why I might feel a certain way, or what and why I'm triggered, or why something's important to me. And it's from that place where I feel there is a sort of an intrinsic connection that begins to fuel deeper conversations, and it begins to evoke emotion, not just the headspace that we live in, but this kind of visceral wow. So
Yeah.
when I get overwhelmed, I tend to X, and that person's triggering me and I want to defend. And so it's kind of getting underneath all that. That is the reaction to something that's deeper. So I think those powerful questions help to peel the onion back. And then somebody can often go, well, I'm not as crazy as I thought. I can see why I'm behaving that way. And in that greater understanding, that's where the architecture begins. Then I'm more awake to what needs to change, or how I want that to change and why I want it to change. And then I think that's for us, whether we're leading a group or it's a one-on-one conversation, then you ask the more powerful questions. They don't stop, but they begin to move down a pathway that can begin to create an action plan. And and I don't create it. I mean, we can't create anybody's plan, and you and I've talked about that. It is a co-creation, and I'm just there, what I call, it depends on what audience I'm talking to, but if it's a touchy-feely audience, then I say I am creating sacred space to ask powerful questions to help you find your own answers, because that's the only way you're going to get to the outcome that you want.
Right.
Now, if in corporate America, I probably wouldn't say sacred space. Changing my language for the audience, but in essence, it's really creating a safe place for people to dive in and to not feel judged, to not feel like they have to have a perfect answer, and to meet themselves with this place of compassion and curiosity,
Yes.
So, I mean, again, 2 more hours I could chat about that one, but
no, and I think that, what's interesting is there's an awakening within corporate America. So I love the fact that you do recognize the audience, But I will say, like, I've talked to a number of executives who recognize that value of creating what some have called psychological safety. It's
Mm-hmm.
that safe
Trust.
space
Yep.
to be able to know that I'm not going to be reprimanded. I'm not, I can put myself out there. I can be vulnerable. I know that term sometimes gets overused, but I can at least
Well, Brene
expose
Brown
myself.
has put that word on the map, which
Oh, I
is
know.
good. I'm
I
glad.
love it. Oh, me too.
Somebody needed to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we're human, and humans have emotions. And so when like you said earlier, when we show up to work, we're not we're not a work person and an away from work person. We're one person. And so that wholeness, we have emotions, things do trigger us, but when we ask questions to unlock us, then that's when we can actually, change behavior and move into a direction that we can grow and improve in any area that we want to grow and improve in. One thing I was going to ask you, something you said a little bit earlier. You talked about like connecting, like strategy and if I'm reading into this, correct me, but culture and strategy and like the whole person. How do you? I don't want to say convince, but how do you convey that those things are really important? Because a lot of CEOs that I talk to, they have a strategy, and that's kind of their that is their number one priority. I have a strategy and I have to execute on that strategy. And in order to do that, I really need a culture that supports that, a culture that's performance based, but yet heart centered as well. So
Ooh, I like that.
talk a
Performance-based
little
and
bit.
heart-centered. I'm
Yeah.
writing that down.
Oh, good. Well, it's all recorded, so you'll be able
Oh,
to
that's
listen back
right.
to it.
That's right.
Yeah, but yeah. So, like, how do you connect the dots for a CEO, business owner, president of a company that has this strategy that they're trying to accomplish for their business, and then needs to be able to support that with a culture that will execute on that strategy.
Well, literally what you said is I think both are important. The performance piece, and that's where a lot of CEOs, CFOs land is give me baseline and I want outcome and I want it to be measurable and we need
Yeah.
people to be efficient and we need for systems and processes to be lean,
Yep.
Six Sigma lean, speaking of.
Yep.
And what I'm seeing being more introduced into conversations now is the heart piece,
Mm-hmm.
because our most important asset as organizations are our people, because we can't execute anything without them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's more research and data supporting the importance of both of those things happening at one time, and OD sort of links them. So we
Sure.
look at performance, we look at outcomes, we look at efficiency, but then we look at culture, we look at structure, norms, values, artifacts, and then how people function within the organization. And if it's not safe, I love that psychological safety comment, then the organization is not going to be able to merge those things and what I would call moving into abundance with those two things working and firing in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
So part of, I think, my challenge and also opportunity is finding the right companies that have a readiness to change.
Sure.
And often I find that out by asking powerful questions.
Yeah.
And if the CEO or C-suite is very resistant, the only thing I can do is introduce case studies, share and educate through not just what research says, but sharing what I've been able to accomplish or other companies successfully.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you almost can tell, is the door cracked? Then I'll keep probing.
Sure.
If the door is shut and locked, and I mean bolt locked, it's not the right timing. Right. And that's one thing that I probably learned later in life, because I'm pretty what's the word, resilient and or driven and very focused. And I think before I learned how to temper that, it would be like, why don't they get this? I'll keep showing them the research, I'll keep pointing out data, I'll give them case studies, I'll keep talking to them. And the reality is sometimes the more you do that, the more you lose them. And so I've kind of like learned to exhale and to let go, and to know that I can't force somebody to be somewhere they're not.
Sure.
And so, and that's kind of a partial answer to your question, because I think there are certain companies that just aren't culturally ready. And
Yep.
so I'm not necessarily not going to keep in touch with them. I'm just going to be aware that my time and energy probably shouldn't be spent trying to talk that shut door into becoming open until they crack it for me.
Yeah,
And then
sure.
for those people who are, I think you and I sit in a phenomenal space right now, because I believe we would probably be considered early adopters
Mm-hmm.
in trying to merge the performance with the the emotional engagement of the employee.
Yeah.
And I believe companies that have less turnover, higher productivity, engagement rates, healthier, happier environments are seeing the outcomes in all of those areas, being that they're positive. Um, you know, so more companies seeing success, those CEOs talk to other CEOs. There's no better influence than the
Yeah.
C-suite talking to the C-suite.
Talking to each other.
And
Yeah.
and I think we've gotten better as vendors and
Mm-hmm.
or partners
Mm-hmm.
to not just talk a theory, but to actually put some structure behind it. And
Yeah.
so there's measurable outcomes. There is a systematized way that it can be, you know, integrated into the culture without a lot of disruption. Because,
Mm-hmm.
when I come in with my programs, I can't act like that's the only initiative the company has, right? I mean, they could be
Right.
institutionalizing a new EMR for all I know. And
Sure.
for a hospital, you talk about a
That's a major
major
thing. Yeah.
disruption.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not the highest priority. So I
Sure.
think myself as a vendor, recognizing I'm just one small, partner solution in the grand scheme of a lot of things that the organization has to be mindful of. And
Yeah.
so does that answer
Yeah.
kind of?
No, absolutely. It is. Yeah, definitely. So, so tell me a little bit about, so one of the things that I like to talk about are like success habits. So I'd love to kind of find out, what are some of your success habits, or what are some things that you've created as like a habit that have led to your success, both as an entrepreneur, as a CEO of a company, as someone who really has been successful in what you've done throughout your career. What are some of those habits? I'd love to be able to kind of hear from you what those are.
So I did think about this one. I thought that was a great question.
Good, good, good.
So bigger picture, and then I'll dive in deeper, is I am very conscious of how I spend my time and my energy.
Yeah.
They are both finite, and I'm not getting any more of them. I don't care how wealthy I am, I cannot buy more.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So those are commodities that are frozen.
Yep.
So how I'm spending my time and energy, I really govern that, and I'll watch that. Energy is an interesting thing. If I'm doing things I love and I'm passionate, I tend to get more excited. When I'm doing things that wear me out, I tend to lose energy. And
Mm.
everybody does. That's sort of
Sure.
just how we're wired. So I try to really manage the pacing of my days to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that I'm not stacking it with tons of things that are going to wear me out, that I create this balance. So the kind of
Yeah.
life balance piece, I can put structure around that in doing that exercise. Because people are like, oh, you need to work on life balance. And you're like, well, tell me how to do that. Well, I don't know. My thing is, look at your calendar and look at how you're spending your time and energy, because
Yeah.
that's a very
Right.
good
Right.
indicator.
Yeah.
I also feel like who I'm spending my time with.
Mm.
So partnering, whether it's friendship partnering or family partnering or business partnering or
Yep.
employee relationships that I have with staff or other coworkers, I'm very aware of how energy affects me. And
Sure.
going back to what triggers which relationships feel really solid. And so I will work on the ones that don't feel good in the way that I can. I can't control somebody else's behavior, but I can control my own, sort of,
Yep.
sometimes.
Yep.
I try to do all the time, but that's not
Right.
reality, because we all crack
Yep.
occasionally. We're beautifully fractured people.
Yes.
So that's another area that I am choosing very strategically. Even this conversation,
Yeah.
do I want to spend an hour with David? Absolutely. I will feel good and inspired after this conversation. And
Sure.
I hope that you do too. And it feels right in my soul. And it
Yeah.
aligns with my mission and vision. So this was like a no-brainer.
Cool.
if I had to talk to my tax accountant for an hour, I would probably buffer that
I don't
with
think any of
the
us would
ballroom
want to do
dancing
that.
and a workout.
Right. Choose a lot of other things than that, right?
So
Yeah.
I think being intentional with the people that I invite into my life, and
Sure.
who I spend energy giving time to.
Mm-hmm.
A few, and that's sort of bigger things, but conceptually, hopefully that gives you a sense. The other things that I do is they're sort of tactical. And
Mm-hmm.
one would be is I get a lot of rest. And if
Yeah.
I don't get a lot of rest, I make it up somewhere, because I don't want to get into a sleep deficit, because it has a very negative impact on my well-being, my ability to concentrate, my stress levels, my
Yeah.
physical well-being. So that's important to me. I also do a lot of mindfulness work, very intentional. If I feel myself getting stressed, I do a lot of self-regulation exercises using techniques and tools that you probably know a lot of them
Sure.
as well, David. And it's not
Yeah.
like you have to be a rocket scientist. It's just
Yeah.
integrating simple tools into your life. And so that's key.
Do you have a morning
Um,
routine? Do you do anything like that in the morning, or do you have a?
I do sometimes, and I'm trying to be authentic, because I don't want to appear like I've got my life all put together, because I don't.
Yeah.
But
No.
I do occasionally meditate.
Sure. Sure.
If I don't meditate in the morning, I find time throughout the day to meditate. My goal would be to meditate every morning
Mm-hmm.
in a more intentional way. I get up and I will do sometimes a devotional. I'll have coffee. I'll think about the day. I'll get intentional with what it is that I want to accomplish, aware of how I feel energetically. So
Sure.
I do a routine of just sort of self-assessment.
Yep.
I think it could be, I honestly think I could strengthen my self-care by literally spending 20 to 30 minutes literally meditating.
Love it.
I'm not there yet, but I'm driving in that direction.
Love it. Yeah.
Pieces
That's
and
awesome.
parts, are coming in throughout the day. So I know I'm doing a lot of work in and around that is serving my greater good.
Yeah.
And I've been, doing mindfulness and yoga and work in and around those types of modalities for
Mm-hmm.
18 years. I've been teaching
Yeah.
yoga, actually 19 now, teaching yoga 19, been doing mindfulness work and research for
Yeah.
probably 15. And so
Cool.
I know all of those things ground me. And
Yeah.
the dancing, and everybody finds things that they can do where they just unplug. The
Yep.
world stops, our brain can relax, and we can do something that just lights us up,
Yep.
kind of like a Christmas tree. And
Yeah.
when I dance and when I do yoga, that's how I feel.
I
I feel
love it.
like I am energizing myself from the inside out, and I'm connecting to something physical, but it's also spiritual, and it makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
And I feel blessed to have things like that in my life, and I schedule them, because
Ah,
I'm
that's really
telling you,
key.
yeah, because that helps to keep the work-life balance piece in
Mm-hmm.
check. It
Yeah.
feeds my soul so I don't run dry.
Yeah.
And if I'm empty, it's very difficult to be effective and at what I do, and it's hard to give to other people.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and being an educator and someone who wants to inspire and empower, I gotta have a full cup, or I'm
That's
gonna be up
right.
there, not walking the walk.
Yeah, right, right. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this is awesome. I mean, you and I could probably talk for hours. Last question I have for you. So I've been asking all of my guests that I've interviewed and chatted with this question, and it stems from the sign on my wall. It's a sign that's from Notre Dame, and it says "Play like a champion today." So I grew up in Indiana, so Notre Dame has been my football team for college football team since I was a kid. So it says "Play like a champion today," and so I'd love to know, what do you think playing like a champion means for you?
That's a very powerful question. And I think that for me, it would be showing up in life full, showing up, meaning the best version of myself,
Oh
which
yeah.
would certainly require self-care and self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I think aligning my purpose with my passion, which I'm so blessed to say I've been able to do.
Yeah.
Because one of your other questions was, well, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
work because I love
Yeah.
my job. And those are a lot of
Yeah.
things that I do. I love to write. but I'm writing for work, but I love it.
Yeah.
And I think success is finding that balance. And I
Mm,
think also it is, how can I give my time and energy while I'm on this planet serving a greater good
mm-hmm.
that not only helps to maybe put a fingerprint here or there that helps us as a culture, as a nation, as a country, as a world,
Yep.
but in doing that, I my soul is full.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little esoteric, but
No.
I do believe it's not just about numbers and it's not just about performance. And I'm highly competitive with myself.
Yep.
I love goals, and I like the pursuit of that. It feels good. There's this end game. I'm liking the way that that feels. But I believe when you lose the intentionality
Mm,
behind why you're driving towards something, that success starts to fracture for me. And I think it's
yeah.
the alignment of all of those things. And I think it is also inviting like-minded people to stand on the same platform. It's lifting other people up
Mm-hmm.
and making sure you're not the smartest person in the room, being
Yeah.
a lifelong learner. I
Yep.
mean, how can I help other people achieve success?
Yeah.
And
I
for
love
me,
that.
that just feels successful, because I don't want to be in an ivory tower playing with my toys by myself. I
Right.
want to be on a giant platform working with like-minded people trying to change the world, or
Yeah. I love
something
it. I love
something
it.
meaningful, right?
Yeah.
And so to
Love that.
me, I mean, that's abundance. That's not just me winning, it's everybody winning.
Yeah.
So that would kind of be my simple answer to that very, very powerful question.
I love that. No, that's great. Yeah. So I think there's a couple, if I could recap some of the things that I heard today, definitely scheduling time to do the things that light you up. And I think that was a really key thing, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Being very intentional. You use that word, and it's a powerful word, intentionality, being very mindful, aware, and being intentional of what you're doing, and how you're showing up in the world. And then really just being able to be the best version of yourself, and become the best version of yourself, and that means evolving over time. And I think that knowing what I know of you, you've done that. You've been able to continue to evolve, and to reinvent yourself and invent yourself, and to really bring everything that you have to the world. So I thank you for sharing the time with us today, and sharing some of your experience, some of your learnings, and your habits. I love that so much. Before we go though, let me ask, where can people get a hold of you? How can people get a hold of you, and find out more about your work, and the things that you're doing in the world?
I will definitely gladly give all that information. And if I may, David, where you were talking, it triggered two things. And,
Yeah.
I know you share some of these interviews to people who are looking for ways to continue to grow themselves. And
Yes.
two things we didn't talk about a lot today that I think are so important is to always stay in a place of self inquiry,
Mm,
not
yes.
only of yourself, but to always be willing to inquire before quickly jumping to conclusions or decisions.
Yep.
And that is the place of inquiry is where we unlock so much
Mm,
potential, and
yeah.
we also create so much more synergy, because we're opening up to one another and we're inquiring, which creates bonding. And
Yeah.
I just think that's powerful. And I also feel like not being afraid to challenge the status quo is critical.
I love
We
that.
need people looking at status quo going, that's good, but it might be able to be done better,
How can
and
we do
that
this
could
better?
potentially be greater. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's not good now. It
Right.
just means there's other possibilities, and those other possibilities, let's open up to that. Rather than defending the status quo, let's open up to greater possibilities, and let's build something better together, rather
Wow.
than hanging on to what feels safe. And so
Yeah.
I am a big believer in that. So I just
I
like
love
wanted to,
it.
I know, and
That's
so many people are afraid to rattle the cage. I'm like, no, rattle it.
Yes,
How? Don't be
absolutely.
disruptive. You can do it in a respectful way, but don't be afraid to say that doesn't feel right, or I think that could be done differently. And you go back to the culture. I mean, it's great when you have a culture that embraces that and encourages people, because that's how great companies get better, is they
Absolutely.
breed that kind of environment of inquiry.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
that's my
That's
last little pearl of wisdom.
powerful stuff to end our conversation, Terrie. I love that. Thank you so much, because I wholeheartedly agree that rattling the status quo and being able to, what that does is it means we got to get outside of our comfort zone, and we've got to be able to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And for those of you who are in the Emerging Leader Inner Circle, listening to this and watching this, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because we've been talking about it for 6 months. So
Like, don't be afraid to go out for the long pass that you've never gone out for, because you might surprise
exactly.
yourself and catch it. Go
That's
for it. And you're
exactly
going to
right.
drop it a couple of times, but just pick the sucker up and keep running. I mean,
Exactly.
perfection's an illusion anyway.
I
So
love it.
you got to get out of that headspace and just do your personal best.
Yeah.
And be silly and not beat yourself up when things aren't perfect. Because again, I mean, you're gonna lose that battle all day long.
No doubt about it. No doubt about
But
it. Don't forget. So tell us, how do we get a hold of you? How can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So multiple ways, right?
Okay, great.
So I know in this technology driven world that we're in now, which could be a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
So T as in Terrie, T Reeves, Reeves at EH, E as in Edward, H as in Harry, A as in Apple. Basically, it's EH America.
EH America
stands for Empower Health America, but I didn't want people to have to typo all those words. So it's T Reeves at EH America. And then my phone number is 704-200-4459. And then my website is empowerhealthamerica.com. And when you go to the site, you can jump around. There's lots of stuff that's going on in the site, but I do have a blog and a newsletter, David, much like you do. I just figure I can't touch everybody, so why not put it in writing, and maybe that'll land somewhere and they'll read it and it might help somebody. So I have a blog, and it's called Join the Pause. Join the pause. Join the pause.
Okay.
And the goal is to invite people to pause so that they can consider new possibilities for your life. Cool. And unless we pause and we ponder and we inquire, it's very difficult to grow. And so my hope is that people will take me literally and pause and stop what they're doing, get off their computer. Well, they'd be on their computer, right?
Right now they are, but it's okay.
Something meaningful while they're on the computer.
When we're done, they can get off the computer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then Facebook, Train for Life America is my Facebook. Instagram is TFL on, that's Instagram. TFL's Instagram, and Train for Life America's Facebook.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Terrie. You know, I so enjoy our conversations, and thanks for taking the time to be able to do this today, and just, you know, share some of your story, share some of your learnings, some of the things that you're involved with. And I really appreciate that. That's something that for me, you know, like you giving of your time, I know is so valuable, because we don't have any more of that. So I really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome, David. And I mean, you know, you read in textbooks all the things that you're supposed to do as a leader, but conversation evokes so much more emotion, and to actually hear and ask these powerful questions is a great way to package up things that you can share with your emerging leaders. So, you know, I commend you for, you know, not for being devoid of ego, and to invite other people to stand on the platform with you and to go, this is what I can teach you, but I can also invite other people into the conversations that may say something in a different way, or maybe compliment what I'm saying or reinforce. And so I can only imagine your clients must love working with you, because everything that I've experienced, you're an extraordinary human being, and I'm glad we've had a chance to meet.
Well, thank you. I definitely won't cut that out at the end.
You shouldn't. No. Loud and proud. Tell them.
Thank you. And I did not pay her to say that. So, well, hey, thanks so much, Terrie. And we will definitely be talking again soon. So bye for now.
Thanks.